Hello YouTube staff, I'm Drew, the owner of this channel, Genetically Modified Skeptic. You may, at the moment, see this video as controversial and worthy of demonetization or worse. However, allow me to assure you that the purpose of this video is to promote the values which YouTube, as a company, embraces. Values like equal rights, freedom of religion, and compassion for your fellow human beings. All I ask for is a fair and professional evaluation of this video's content in your monetization review. That's what I'm all about here on my channel. Professionalism. Thank you. I'm not sure how, but I recently stumbled across some pretty serious propaganda on YouTube. It's a channel whose content is all related to establishing the caliphate and informing others of what that would entail. If you're not sure what that is, the caliphate or khilafah is an Islamic state headed by the caliph, who is a supposed successor to the prophet Muhammad. The caliph would not be another prophet, but a religious and political leader. Those running the channel, I found, are convinced that that system was formulated through divine inspiration and is therefore the best system of governance ever devised. So, of course, they want to convince their viewers of that too. One video of theirs, which I found particularly revolting and filled with fallacious reasoning, has to do with how the caliphate would handle apostasy. So, let's check that out.
How would the Khilafah deal with those who choose to leave the Islamic belief?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The issue of apostasy forms part of the rules to do with the defense of the Islamic ideology. It can be seen both capitalism and communism had mechanisms in place to protect their respective ideologies and dealt with any undermining by its own citizens very harshly. It is in this context the Islamic rules of apostasy need to be understood.
The fact that the Islamic ideology will be discussed here in reference to other economic systems is telling of the purpose of this video. This isn't just proposing theological arguments. They're trying to present this system as a valid contender alongside established economic systems. That, in turn, tells us that they're appealing to those who don't necessarily rely on theology as the sole basis for their opinions. Simply put, they're trying to appeal to moderates on their turf. As this progresses, though, we'll see how immoderate their ideas are. Also, I've got to already point out that they say their system needs protections to be put in place to preserve it, but isn't the system they're proposing supposed to be divine? Supposedly their God, the most powerful being in existence, designed this system, and it still requires protections against those who simply don't believe in it. That doesn't make their God sound all-powerful at all. So far, it kind of sounds like this whole system was devised by humans vying for power. I wonder why that is.
Entering into Islam is essentially entering a contract. There can be no compulsion in it.
There's not supposed to be any compulsion in Islam, none at all. Keep that in mind for later.
People enter Islam based on free will. As there is no force, the intellectual conviction must be overwhelming, especially since someone entering into Islam willingly knows full well there can be no return to non-Islam due to the death penalty. This cements the need for intellectual conviction.
Now you see why this video stood out to me. Now, with the way this is presented, it comes off like capital punishment is a deterrent for joining Islam for anything but intellectual reasons. But as this continues, you'll see why it's not. Also, isn't capital punishment a form of compulsion not to leave Islam? Why is that okay, but compulsion to join Islam isn't? Their commitment to intellectual persuasion alone has already been shown to be fake.
It also prevents those who would speak to publicly become Muslim, then publicly apostate in order to bring doubt into the ideology.
They actually think people join Islam and then apostate on purpose just to cast doubt on Islam. People do join Islam and then leave it all the time, yes, but it isn't a ploy to defeat Islam. That's just an inevitable part of the existence of a religion. It happens in Christianity too. I once joined Christianity honestly, and I left it honestly, like the vast majority of people do. The idea that apostates have such plans all along lacks any sense, given that ex-Muslims often lose their closest relationships from leaving Islam, and their physical safety is obviously often endangered. The way of thinking on display here is paranoid, unfalsifiable, and conspiratorial. There's no way to disprove these paranoid delusions, just like it's impossible to disprove that the government has been overtaken by reptilian shapeshifters, which can mimic human biology in every way.
No ideological state would allow its basis to be openly questioned in society, as this would lead to the weakening and possible removal and replacement of the ideology by another.
Ideological states might not allow it, but successful states definitely do. The ideology which my country, the United States, bases its government upon actually does allow its basis to be openly questioned. That's the point, and that's why it works. Look at the most prosperous areas in the world, places like the US, Western Europe, Australia, and Japan. In all of these places, the powers that be can be questioned and even slandered endlessly, and yet they continue to prosper. The freedom to question is fundamental to a happy, thriving society. If you actually want that, you're going to have to deal with dissenters hurting your precious little feelings. Seriously, people are expected to believe that an all-powerful being created a system of governance that can't stand up against open questioning from lowly human beings. Human beings have created governments that stand up against that all the time. God should be able to do much better than any human being, but apparently, according to this video, he can't. The case of the caliphate's divine origin really isn't coming in strong.
The Khilafah is not a totalitarian state. It does not monitor the lives of its citizens in their private spheres, in other words, in their homes. Hence, in the Khilafah, all citizens are free to do and think as they please within the confines of their own homes. Thus, in the Khilafah, if one was to apostate but kept his secret or was to leave the Khilafah, the state does not carry out any punishment as such. An individual never publicly undermined the Islamic ideology.
That does not demonstrate the lack of totalitarian rule. What was described was someone acting completely identically to a Muslim whenever they're observed, and then the state not punishing them since they can't tell that person isn't a Muslim. They're saying, oh, we're not a totalitarian state because if we never catch you doing or thinking the wrong things, we won't punish you. That's a ridiculous cop-out. The punishment for thought crime would still exist in this system. If it accidentally gets out that someone doesn't think thoughts sanctioned by the government, they're dead. If you punish someone for disagreeing with the state, as soon as that information is made available to you, you're definitely a totalitarian regime. I don't think this point of theirs is made from a place of genuine conviction. I rarely say this or think this of those I respond to in videos, but I do think they're bold-faced lying. They know it's totalitarian, but they think that's okay because it's God's will, and they think people will buy their lies if they're packaged well enough.
It is understood from surveying the Islamic evidences, the actions of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the actions of the generations after him, the Sahaba. Those who chose to leave the fold of Islam require vigorous debate and discussion, where rational proofs are presented in the best way. If after this they do not repent, then they would fall foul of capital punishment, as they are attempting to undermine the Islamic ideology.
Oof, I've got a lot to say about this one. Again, they describe simple disagreement with them after vigorous debate with no further action attached as punishable by death. That is capital punishment for thought crime and is the most extreme of actions which a totalitarian state commits. Someone could even believe it's wrong to criticize Islam and never even offer criticism of it, but they'd still be killed if they stopped believing it personally. And that's just the start of their incoherence. Remember that no compulsion thing they were so serious about? Why are they abandoning that now? Literally threatening someone's life if they don't believe is the way to apply the most compelling force to make someone believe something, or at least act like it. For most people, it's easy to see that this system is absolutely disgusting, psychopathic, and a recipe for misery, to say the absolute least. But there are those who look past common instinct to examine arguments like those within this video when they're presented. And it's those people I'm appealing to when I reveal the holes in this video's reasoning. The creators of this content can't keep their own story straight, yet they pride themselves on their logical proofs and reasoning skills. They can't even get basic definitions of ideas like totalitarian and compulsion correct. Why listen to anything they have to say at this point?
Capital punishment is not something specific to Islam. Capital punishment in the United States is officially sanctioned by 38 of the 50 states.
Look, I'm not a capital punishment proponent, but I will definitely say that the implementation of capital punishment in the US is a completely different process than anything this guy has described. The US uses capital punishment on people who actually harm other people in excruciating ways. These people carry out extensive demonstrable harm on other human beings, and that's why they're punished. In this Islamic system, people would be put to death for nothing but disagreeing with Islam. I dare you to come up with any compelling evidence of any demonstrable harm that disbelieving in Islam causes. This false equivalence is a joke.
In the US, surveys have long shown a majority in favor of capital punishment. An ABC News survey in July 2006 found 65% in favor of capital punishment. 35% consistent with this. Other surveys since 2000 have shown half the American public believing the death penalty isn't imposed frequently enough.
But no one in the US besides people like the guy in this video are saying that it needs to be used on people who disagree with the state on religious ideas. They're saying it should be used more often on criminals who physically harm others in extreme ways. It's a process which actually aims to keep more people alive, regardless of their personal views on any issue, by eliminating those who victimize the innocent. This is a false equivalence, and I still think it's a criminal misrepresentation of US law, even though I don't advocate for any capital punishment personally. The things the host of this video said may sound so extreme that it's unbelievable that regular people would ever accept it, but believe it, it does happen. We have to wake up to the fact that radicalization, in part through propaganda like this, happens every day all over the world. And it isn't just propaganda alone. Lack of education on humanitarian values and lack of de-radicalizing voices in religious communities plays a role as well. And yes, marginalization because of anti-Muslim bigotry is part of the equation. Young people fall victim to radicals because they don't have the good influences and opportunities they need. Radicalization is poison to our world, and we all have to find our place as part of the antidote. My place is speaking up against propaganda like this since I have a platform. If you're a non-Muslim, part of your role can be normalizing dissent against bad extremist religious ideas while fighting against anti-Muslim bigotry. If you're Muslim, you can play the vital role of being a voice to speak against radicalizing forces within Muslim communities. We need rational dissenters from all walks of life to rally against radicalization if we want to stave it off, keep our world free and peaceful, and keep our loved ones from being harmed or harming others. Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. As of this video's release, my fundraising campaign for ex-Muslims of North America has officially ended, and I want to thank all of you for donating to such an amazing cause. If you missed the fundraiser somehow, you can still donate on XMNA's website, link in the description. Giving to them is a great way of fighting radicalization and ensuring the safety of more ex-Muslims in dangerous environments. As always, go ahead and subscribe, check out my Patreon, follow me on Twitter and Facebook at GMSkeptic, join my Discord, and until next time, stay skeptical.